Hi again, everybody. Welcome to Inside Golf. I'm Harry Donahue. You know, recently we had the U.S. Open. It was quite an event. But did you know it took 17 years for the first American to win the National Open of the United States? The drought ended in 1911 at Chicago Golf Club. And the man who did it was a Philadelphian, a 19-year-old by the name of John Joseph McDermott. In fact, the following year, he would win again in Buffalo. And that was the first time in the history of the U.S. Open that the winning score was subpar. John McDermott's career, however, went into a tailspin within 5 years of him winning the National Open. We'll be back on this week's edition of Inside Golf to look at the life and the legacy of the great Philadelphia golfer John McDermott with our great Philadelphia golf historian Pete Trenham. Next, here on Inside Golf. The 24th season of Inside Golf is presented by Destination Montco Golf. 50 courses, over 300,000 yards. Check them out at montcogolf.com. By the First Tee Greater Philadelphia, building game changers. The First Tee not only helps young men and women become better golfers, but most important, better people. Get involved. Visit firstteephiladelphia.org. By Gap, celebrating amateur golf since 1897. By Jersey Man and Philly Man magazine, a digital publication and private business network. Read the current issue, free, at jerseymanmagazine.com. And by Inside Golf's partner since 1998, the Philadelphia PGA section, the experts in the game and business of golf, and celebrating their centennial year. Take time to thank your local men and women PGA professionals.
Golf is the great equalizer. For many, this journey is an escape from reality, a chance to be part of a team, a career opportunity. PGA Reach impacts lives through golf by lifting people up, giving them hope, and sending them down an alternate path that they never saw coming. With PGA Reach Philadelphia, as in life and in golf, the most important shot you take is the next one.
They're not just familiar faces. They're your friends and neighbors. It's their small businesses, a beating heart that makes a neighborhood a home. The places with a pick-me-up, or a story that inspires, where you can share a taste of comfort with the personal touch that makes our world shine a little brighter. Support small and make a big difference. Make it local. Make it Main Street. Make it Montco.
Welcome back to Inside Golf. We are at Manufacturers Country Club, the beautiful 10th hole and 9th hole right behind us here on the patio, overlooking this great 18 holes of championship golf with Pete Trenham, who is now an honorary member at St. David's, but for years, Pete, you were the head pro at St. David's, and by far the man that knows more about Philadelphia golf history than any 10 people. It's always a pleasure to have Pete Trenham with us. Today we're talking about Johnny McDermott, arguably the best golfer ever that turned out of Philadelphia. As I mentioned in the opening, Johnny is still the youngest player ever to win the U.S. Open. Right. He's the first American ever to win it, and he won it back-to-back years. Right. Chicago 1 year, I think it was 1911, Buffalo in 1912. But Pete, actually, he came rather close to winning it before those two, right here in his hometown of Philadelphia.
Right. He came within one stroke of winning 3 straight U.S. Opens.
And that was 1910.
1910 at the Philadelphia Cricket Club.
St. Martin's course.
St. Martin's course, which was the only course they had then.
Right.
And the U.S. Open was here, and it finished in a three-way tie with Johnny McDermott and Alex Smith and his brother McDonald Smith. The three of them tied. But if McDermott had just made one more putt, he would have won the U.S. Open 3 times, but you never know. If you win the first one, whether you're going to win the next one or not, who knows?
He was born into an Irish-American family. His father, I think, was a mailman. He had 2 sisters who later served as his chauffeur.
They looked out for him.
And take care of him when he had been institutionalized up in Norristown. But In the early years, he was a caddy
Right.
when Aronimink was in the King Sessing section of Philadelphia,
Right.
and that's where he grew up. Tell us about that.
Well, I understand he visited his grandfather one day, and the golf course was across the street or something, so he became aware of the golf course and found out you could make money as a caddy, and he started caddying at Aronimink, which was in West Philadelphia then, and he had some aptitude for golf, and pretty soon he even fixed up a little place across the street from the golf course, where a field where he could practice a little bit and put some holes in the ground, and spent time when he practicing there, and he just kept getting better and better. He just had the ability, and he wound up as a really turned pro. In those days, I mean, a lot of kids turned pro early because they went to work early. Maybe he didn't finish high school. Well, he wound up as a pro at Moorestown over in New Jersey, and he went on from there to Atlantic City as the pro. And so when he won the U.S. Open finally in 1911, he gave Bill Byrne credit for really helping him with his game and getting to the point where he was capable of doing that.
Talking about his swing, first of all, physically, he wasn't a very big guy.
No,
he only weighed about 130 pounds. And he had what they called, a St. Andrew's swing?
Yeah, it was.
I don't want to ask you to show us, but maybe you could describe
he
it.
swung around his body rather than upright. It was around. You'd call it flat. Low hands back and low hands in the follow through. And you probably saw somebody, and you probably copied somebody that he thought he liked the looks of it or whatever. You don't know how it evolves, but he just had an ability, but he also had a tremendous desire. There's stories about how he went to church every morning, and then before he opened the golf shop, he would be out practicing. Like, he had to open the golf shop, say, at 8 o'clock, but he'd be there at daylight, and he even took newspapers and laid them out on the ground and tacked them down with somehow, maybe with stones, or held them in place, and something as a target to hit shots at, and he would practice and practice, and then he late in the day he'd play till dark, and just
Right.
Like a lot of people that are successful, they just are driven.
He, when he was at Atlantic City, I think it was, used to have these challenge matches against the area pros, and talk about money. Some of them were up like $1,000, and
Right.
eventually he won them all, and
Yeah.
nobody wanted to play them.
But there were people that had money that would pay him a lot of money to play with them. He made money playing with wealthy people, but he put out the edict, like, I'll take on anybody for any price. And after a few times, a lot of them backed off, and sometimes he'd have to play two people
Sure.
in order to have a game. Right.
The movie The Greatest Game Ever Played, of course, is Francis Ouimet's victory in a playoff over Ted Ray, Harry Vardon at Brookline. And in the movie, McDermott is portrayed as being a hothead and basically saying that you Brits are not going to take the U.S. Open trophy home with you. And first of all, historically, that he did make a sort of a statement like that, but it wasn't at that event. It was at an event previous.
It was at Shawnee.
At Shawnee, which he won over Vardon and Ray.
He won by 7 or 8 strokes at Shawnee, and afterwards he was asked to make a speech, like a acceptance speech, and Tillinghast, A.W. Tillinghast, the great golf architect, was the golf chairman at Shawnee. He had designed the course up there, and he said nobody was more ill prepared to make a speech than Johnny McDermott, and he got up on a chair and
Right.
he gave this speech, and the bottom line was that the Americans don't need to worry, the Brits won't be taking our trophy back across the ocean, and all that. And so Tillinghast went to all the reporters there and asked them not to publish this, not to print it, and they all agreed. But one changed his mind and did, and then once it happened, then the whole world came down on him, sort of. And the
Sounds like what happens today with social media.
Right, and the USGA even threatened to ban him from being able to defend his title at Brookline, and there was a lot of hullabaloo, I guess back and forth about this, which put a lot of more pressure on him already, than just defending his title.
We will be back with Pete Trenham talking about the legacy of the great Philadelphia golfer Johnny McDermott next on Inside Golf.
93 warmer days, promising new adventure, and views that never get old. Your favorite season starts now. Summer on. Receive a credit of up to $3,500 through August 2nd.
Welcome back to Inside Golf. We're at Manufacturers talking to Pete Trenham, noted golf historian, former head pro at St. David's, now an honorary member at St. David's, and we're talking about the legacy of the great John McDermott. We talked about how he won 2 U.S. Opens at as a teenager, still the youngest ever, whether American or any nationality, to win that prestigious event. And also what happened later. Within 5 years, his life would change dramatically. Suffering from mental illness, perhaps he was schizophrenic. Nobody seems to know, because back in those days, they probably didn't know. But he was committed to Norristown State Hospital. But he had a series of events before that, Pete, that probably may have led to him breaking down as he did. One, and he went over to Europe one time to play in the British Open, and he was late getting there, and the rules said he couldn't play. They were going to give, the R&A was going to give him an exemption, I think. And he turned it down, he said, because it wouldn't be fair to the rest of the field.
Right, yeah, he missed a train, he missed a ferry, something, you know, he was on the continent, but he was playing somewhere else, and then he was late, and they said they were going to make an exception, let him still try to qualify, even though he missed his starting time, and he said no, it wouldn't be fair to the other players. Then when he headed home, the ship was just leaving port, and it got hit by a grain freighter.
Right.
They lowered the lifeboats, but they didn't have to use them. Fortunately, the ship was able to get back to port, and he got on another ship and came home. And the people have tried to analyze what went wrong, but he's not the first one that's ever happened to when they're in their late teens or early 20s. It's just something in late 1914, like October. He went down after the U.S. Open. He went to Memphis and won the Western Open,
which is probably the
a
number
big deal.
two.
It was the number 2 tournament in the country at
Yeah.
that time. But within a few weeks after that, he collapsed in the pro shop at Atlantic City, and his family had to come and get him. And
his mother actually committed him to Norristown State Hospital for the insane. That's what its label was back in those days. And that's where he spent virtually the rest of his life. He didn't die until 1971.
Right.
Interesting story. We'll get to that in just a moment regarding that U.S. Open at Marion in 1971 and John McDermott. But getting back, he's at Norristown State Hospital. He even laid out a golf course on the grounds that he would play occasionally. Walter Hagen, who was the preeminent golfer of the era, would come and visit him.
He did go to visit him. He did. He was here in Philadelphia playing an exhibition at Gulf Mills, and somebody told him that McDermott wasn't far away, and so he had somebody drive him over there to see Johnny. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Sir Walter. Yeah. But also he had 2 sisters, and they basically took care of John in his latter years. And what happened was he would want to get out. He was able to get out with them maybe one day a week from Norristown. They would drive him to different courses, and you even had the chance to meet John McDermott.
Yeah, several times. They would pick him up, and they would take him to Rolling Green or Lanark or St. David's and different places, and he would come in and say hello. And they probably told him, don't be a nuisance, don't stay long, and he'd just come in, and he would always ask me, is Tommy here? And it turned out Tommy Robinson, who had been the pro at St. David's before me, had worked for him in Atlantic City when he actually had his nervous breakdown. And, but it just didn't, whatever they did to you in those days in the mental hospitals, it wasn't good. It wasn't successful, it wasn't good.
Right. And if it happened today, probably he would have been put under some treatment,
That's
medication,
right.
and
That's right.
would have been able to go back on tour.
Many people today have had these problems, and there have been treatments of different medical treatments or whatever that have made them live a decent life, you know. And
I want to touch on the story in 1971, the U.S. Open. Trevino beats Jack Nicklaus in the playoff at Merion. And the story surfaced later that John McDermott went out there on the grounds, and supposedly somebody at Merion in the clubhouse or pro shop saw him and tried to get him taken off the grounds. They thought, you know, he was maybe having some mental issues or something like that. And Arnold Palmer came and recognized him, knew exactly who John was, and said, no, he's not going anywhere. He's my guest. He's a fellow champion of the U.S. Open.
Right, you know, well, most of the people in golf knew who he was, you know, and recognized him, because he was around at lots of different things. And so, you know, it's just unfortunate. And supposedly Palmer asked him something about, how's your game? He said, my putting's not too good or something. And Palmer said, that's me too, or something.
And ironically, within 2 months, at the age of 79, I think just a few days before his 80th birthday, John McDermott left us in 1971.
That's right. He was there for the playoff with, you know, with Nicklaus and Trevino and all that, you know.
Yeah, if that had happened today, he would have spent probably 20 minutes on television every day talking about what he did back in the teens.
Yeah, well, it would have been difficult.
And where golf was in 1971.
That would have been.
Pete, stay with us. We'll be back with you to wrap things up. We're going to take a break. Coming up next here on Inside Golf, our teed off panel. Ready to go.
Par 4, one of my favorite par 4s anywhere is number 5 at Lancaster. It's a bunkerless hole. There's a little penalty area that fronts the green.
Welcome back. Inside Golf continues. Teed Off is next here on Inside Golf. We're on the deck overlooking the 18th hole at Lulu Country Club in Upper Dublin. Matt Fry joins us again, Director of Communications, Philadelphia section of the PGA. Good to see you, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Harry.
President of GAP in his first year is Oscar Mestri, but he's been involved in Inside Golf for a long time. Good to see you. Congratulations, Loam, in the recently played 36-hole event, the Pennsylvania Open. How about you?
Thank you.
Still got it?
Yeah, Pennsylvania Senior Open, just to clarify.
Okay. Hey,
thank you.
Second place is second place. And speaking of great guys and winners, Harry Mays, you've heard him on the radio. You see him now on a podcast called Swing It and Ding It. How you doing, Harry?
Doing great, Harry.
It's been a while since we had you on Teed Off. Are you busy?
I'm busy, yeah.
You're getting around. I like the shades, by the way.
These daily radio shows, you know, you act like you're curing cancer. You can't leave the radio show.
I got you. Okay. Oscar, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
Our topic on Teed Off today is name your 3 greatest holes, in your opinion, that you've played. Now, I know it's like trying to thank somebody after you won an award and you leave 5 people out.
Right.
But these holes aren't going to chase you down. Okay?
Right.
If you miss one, don't worry about it.
Well, some of my constituents in GAP might, 300 clubs,
That's
80,000 members, but
that's what it's all about.
So I'm going to keep it within GAP to keep it nice and simple. I'd say that you know, I love short par 4s that you know, make you have a lot of accuracy. So in that respect, I've got 2 of my favorites are number 11 at Merion and number 11 at Huntington Valley.
Okay.
Love that, and then you've got to you know, it's hard not to pick something from Pine Valley. Okay, you could pick 18 holes, but I'll pick a par 5 from Pine Valley, and that would be number 15. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to play that a lot of times, and I still don't know exactly where to hit the ball and or get it to where you want it to be, because it just continues to move hard left, right on that second shot. But great holes that test you every single time you play them. That's a sign of a good golf hole.
Speaking of that, I read something recently about Babe Ruth played at Pine Valley. I'm sure more than once, but one time he hit it into the woods off the tee, hit it deeper into the woods, and he hollered out, "Is there a fairway out there?" You know. Plus, it's what, 615 yards?
Yes.
Straight uphill.
Yes.
Okay, we got it. All right, Matt. Representing this section, you get to play a lot. You see some great venues. Give me 3 holes.
Oh, yeah. So I'll start with par 5. One of my favorite courses in the area is the North Course at Stonewall. It's such a fun golf course. It's wide open, but the 3rd hole there is a great par 5. You hit it way up to probably the highest point of the property. Everything moves to the left, and then your second shot, everything moves to the right, down the hill to maybe the lowest point of the property. It's just a beautiful hole. Par 4, one of my favorite par 4s anywhere, is number 5 at Lancaster. It's a bunkerless hole. There's a little penalty area that fronts the green, but it's short. So you can hit driver or lay back with a longer iron into the green, or you can have a wedge in, and the green is no slouch either. It's fantastic. And lastly, probably number 7 at Scranton. Scranton's overlooked a lot. It's a Travis golf course, just amazing greens. And number 7 has such a wild green. There's 3 or 4 different tiers, and it's just like a wave that just keeps going. And from the fairway, it's just a beautiful look.
Okay. Harry?
I haven't had the chance to play a lot of great places, but those that I have stick
Are you
out to
begging
me.
for invitations
Oh,
here?
absolutely. I take any and all
I
invitations.
noticed that. You
Yeah.
noticed that, Oscar?
Well done.
Yeah, but I can't leave one out from Pine Valley. I was lucky enough to make it out there last August. And I'm going to take the different par 5, the 7th, the Devil's Half Acre.
Hell's Half Acre.
Hell's Half Acre. It's just, unbelievable. Just that never seems to end. That second shot over all that, the carry there is just magnificent. And then you have the shot into the green that you have to execute. As far as a par 3, I'd have to go down to Palm Beach Gardens and Jack's place. The Bears, or not the Bears Club, but the Bear Trap.
Trap.
The number 15
Water.
at the Bear Trap is just daunting from, regardless of which tee that you get lucky enough to play, but I was able to play there a few years ago. And as far as a par 4, maybe just for Vista alone, they flipped the 9s at Torrey Pines North, and I think it's now the 16th hole. It used to be the 7th, but it runs right along the ocean, and it's like an uphill par 4 with just magnificent views.
Right. You mentioned the 11th hole at Huntington Valley.
Yes.
How many times have you driven that green?
Never.
Do you go for it, though?
You can't. I'm not from the tees we're playing.
No?
Maybe Jimmy Sullivan could, but I can't. I can get
so
close.
You lay up.
Yeah.
And then, but that could be a tough second shot, that depending on where the pin is.
Well, where the pin is and the creek that defends the front of it, it's a very narrow green.
Right.
So when they have it firm and fast, which is the way they like to have it, and they have it 98% of the time, you land on the front third, you kick to the back.
Yeah.
So it's just really hard to get it where you want it.
I was in one of those back bunkers yesterday.
At Huntington Valley?
Into the
on
wind.
that hole?
Yeah.
On your second
Not
shot?
a place you want
or
to
your
be.
third or fourth?
Second.
No.
Second.
Okay. Now, you get to play a lot. What is your overall, aside from those 3, favorite holes that you've ever played? You have one?
Yeah, I mean, I've been
In the section, in the area.
Oh, in the section. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me think about that. Probably, I really like number 4, I think, or 3. 4 at North Hills. It's a great little par 5. It's long. I forget what the card yardage is, but it's
620 from the tip.
600.
Yeah,
but
620.
there's enough bunkers out there, and it's wide enough where you have some strategic interest in how to get there. It might take you, 3 or 4 shots to get there, but it's pretty good, and the green is excellent.
Right, and it slopes back to front. I'll
Correct.
tell you a quick story about that, if I may. I was a member for years at North Hills, played in the gap matches. I forget what team we were playing. All 4 players parred that hole, which to me is an event worth celebrating. I've played 1,000 rounds at North Hills and never seen all 4 guys in the foursome par that hole. Now, I'm a bad golfer. I'm not Oscar Westman, okay? I'm sure you could go out there with anybody and make them play better, but that's pretty.
I can bogey it from anywhere there. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. We'll be back. Inside Golf continues with more in just a moment. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Inside Golf from Beautiful Manufacturers with Pete Trenham. We've been talking about the legacy of Philadelphian John McDermott. And Pete, when you talk about legacies, John McDermott, unfortunately, is not in the World Golf Hall of Fame. He is in the PGA Hall of Fame. He's in the Philadelphia Section Hall of Fame, but he's not in the World Golf Hall of Fame. And I don't know if his chances are going to get any better the longer we get away from the lifetime of John McDermott. But personally, I'm sure you would agree, he deserves to be in there.
He deserves to be in there because they've got a lot of people. I think even McDonald Smith, I think, would never won a major. There's people in there who won one major, and McDermott won two, and you could say he won three majors. The Western Open was they didn't use the term major in those days. The press wasn't.
And what happened to him wasn't his fault. He didn't play himself out of the game, if you know what I mean.
No.
I'm going to close, I think, with something we talked about, how Walter Hagen used to visit the great John McDermott in his latter years. And one time upon leaving, John said to him, "Just tell the boys I'm doing fine."
Right.
And I think, John, I can speak for Pete and a lot of area golfers, we would be feeling a lot finer if you were in that World Golf Hall of Fame. Maybe it'll happen someday. It certainly is long overdue. Thank you, Pete Trenham.
Okay.
And that's going to do it for Inside Golf. I'm Harry Donahue. Remember, no matter how bad it's going for you out there, don't pick up. We'll see you next time right here on Inside Golf. The 24th season of Inside Golf is presented by Destination Montco Golf. 50 courses, over 300,000 yards. Check them out at montcogolf.com. By the First Tee, Greater Philadelphia, building game changers. The First Tee not only helps young men and women become better golfers, but most important, better people. Get involved. Visit firstteephiladelphia.org. By Gap, celebrating amateur golf since 1897. By Jersey Man and Philly Man Magazine, a digital publication and private business network. Read the current issue, free, at jerseymanmagazine.com. And by Inside Golf's partner since 1998, the Philadelphia PGA Section, the experts in the game and business of golf, and celebrating their centennial year. Take time to thank your local men and women PGA professionals.